these movements do happen without any indication of borders, which is for us very hard to grasp. We have to indicate somehow. We are, how should I say, perhaps, yeah, we are spoiled by rationalism in a way, so the language demands certain rules. And when I was asking translators, they seemed not to know always whether some line is happening in one's imagination or in reality, so to say. But in Japanese, it seemed that one doesn't care. I want to ask you, Japanese poets, what was your experience in translating Slovenian texts which care perhaps for your point of view too much about what is happening where, how to this mechanics of action? I don't know. Suga?
Well, I think it is true that we have a tradition, a certain tradition of our literary creation, that there is no difference between what is imagined and what really happened in reality. There is traditionally no difference between realism and some kind of surrealistic perception, including that of dreams. Especially dream has played a very important role since so-called Japanese literature began in 8th, 9th century. And especially since the Heian period, this has always been a staple for our imagination. And I personally do not make much distinction between what I imagined, what I dreamt, and what I really experienced. So this might have caused a lot of headache to somebody like Milan, who worked on my work. And on the other hand, I was impressed by my work on his work, Gašper's and Katya's work. They were both solidly based upon reality, not only his or herself, but from that family tradition as well. And so some of the things that he related in his poetry are that's something that really happened. And it was, of course, modified through imagination, which is understandable because that's what poetry is all about. And I was quite impressed by working on his work, the precision of his images. So I think ultimately this doesn't really matter if there is a, this difference between reality principle or this dream principle. What can I say? Does it matter?
No. No, in fact not, but any comments? Gašper, Katja?
I don't know, I would generally agree with this, that it isn't actually important where you take from in your writing, but how precise you are in dealing with it. I realize this can sound a bit empty from time to time, but I think that, of course, there will always be differences between traditions and even between very specific people inside of these traditions, and the quality is very rarely depends on how you deal with the material this tradition offers to you. It's, I don't know, the matter of quality in poetry is always somewhere else, in the mechanisms you use. And even, I mean, this is what makes it possible for people who write completely different things and about completely different things in completely different manners that will still be able to enjoy work of those other people. And this is what, I mean, this is actually what international dialogue is based upon, that you can feel very deep respect for something that works on completely different mechanisms than your own world does. And that this doesn't call for changing, I mean, ourselves, or for forcing other cultures or other people to change themselves.
I agree, but then when it comes to translate a line, you have to take solutions.
Yeah, that's true.
What was your experience in dealing with the poems of the Japanese colleagues?
I mean, it's always honest for the translator to try to do justice to the poetry and to the other poet, not to your own taste. But in a sense, you need to transform things when they sound really awful in your language. When doing things complete justice would mean that it loses its aesthetic value. Then I think you can, I mean, that you're allowed to make some modifications. But if it's possible not to make those, then I suppose you shouldn't. I mean, this is how I would like to work, and how I would be glad if other people would be translating my work.
Gašper, I know you translated very intensely the work of some of the poets here.
I would like to talk about one poet from Keijiro. It was about climbing a tree, a mountain. And it begins very picture-like. There are only pictures. There's a path full of mud. The plain opens on a rocky terrace. It's the triangle of a mountain you see in the shadow that's falling on the plain, and the sun is behind. And then, at one moment, it goes into the imaginary. Then the poet he is beginning to think about the soldiers that were caught in the blizzard on that mountain. A lot of them killed. And all of a sudden he can feel this imaginary and reality, the coldness that is surrounding him, the clouds that come slowly towards him, and he can feel the last breath of fallen soldiers. It's a song that makes a really strong impression on me. And Keijiro's Ryouichi's song, a symbol of a walnut, that was explained in such detail that I was astonished of it. Walnut as a tree where the children were picking walnuts before the tragedy of the tsunami and the nuclear blast. Then suddenly the walnut trees were cut down by the waves because they were damaged, and there were suddenly no walnut trees there to pick walnuts from. And then, in his poem, he's asking the whole world to plant walnut trees, that we can pick the walnuts from them and feed with them. It's actually a symbol that it was very, very intense, a very intense poem. Mr. Kenji, we were debating about everything, actually. That he's a prisoner, a young soul, prisoned in an old body. And I must think of Elvis Costello when I read his poetry. He told me that he was very like he was a few veliko ameriške tradicije pravzaprav vidne. Vidi se tudi, da je študiral ameriško poezijo. Je to zelo zanimivo. Vse poetike
He
pravzaprav.
studied American poetry, and there he says that there was an influence of American poetry.
American and English poetry.
Yes, and English. The Welsh practice.
Yeah.
An excellent prose-like poem. Mizuki,
The experience here has made me realize my work was deeply influenced by American and European culture. Such cultures may be easier for you, for Slovenian, to understand than Japanese. I'm very happy.
I'd like to say something about Mizuki's poems. Very personal, experienced poems, very familiar for me, very suffering, some kind of delicatno, delicate, ja, nežne, prefinjene, zelo ritmične, tudi slovensko. Tudi prevod, mislim, Kiwao's poem, The Grand Coda, was like a volcano on the other side, like a volcano of words, just the magma that's flowing, always some kind of in a same way, but always different, the flow of the words. I enjoyed reading The Grand Coda.
Kiwao speaks about mystery of life, about mystery of existence in very elementary way. Yeah. So it's not easy to translate him because it's joking with words, joking with philosophical, phenomenological dimensions of existence. You know, but I deeply admired his poems.
I had the coincidence, perhaps, because it was impossible that each one would, in this short time, translate all of the poems, so we split them up. Though some of the poems are translated 2 times or even 3 times, so we will be able to compare different solutions of the same text, and this, I think, is a great advantage of a meeting like that. But in my case of translating Mizuki, Misumi, and Mr. Kiwao's poems, texts of both, which I have translated, were very deeply spin into psychological, subconscious, somehow regions, trying to make visible what we usually don't think about, or which goes towards a kind of a region of madness or a region of despair. And so this introspective, introverted poetics made them somehow close, at least the poems that I've done. Perhaps they could say something about their experience of translating Slovenian poetry.
Thinking that how I can translate or how I can deliver what Japanese people doesn't know as from their usually from their daily life, such as Slovene thinking, Slovene way of life.
ですけど、どう日本での表現に置き換えるか、日本での習慣に置き換えるかではなくて、スロベニアのその習慣をそのまま打ち出して、日本の人がそれを読んで想像していくことが面白いのかなと思ってそうやって
So in the workshop I decide to work. I decide to write not to translate how you Slovene have in Japanese way, but in the way that to describe Slovene literally how you Slovene have in your life, not translate but describe.
ちょっと不思議な体験をした感じがしています。
Mysterious, interesting experience.
僕はフランス文学を専攻してまして、
My major is French literature.
フランスの詩なんかを翻訳したり、そういう経験はあるんですけど、
I translate French word.
そうすると原作者、翻訳者というのははるかな時間と空間を隔てて、存在しています。
There is a distance between author, original author, and translator.
僕の場合、例えばルネシャールの詩を訳したことがあるんですけども、ルネシャールという詩人自体も死んでしまっています。
In my case,